Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for this WSLS 10 breaking news report. I'm John Carlin.
And I'm Lindsay Ward. We're going to get straight to a news conference with Roanoke City Police.
At approximately 6:02 a.m. today, Roanoke police officers responded to a shots fired call at 830 Campbell Avenue Southeast, known locally as Freight Car America. At 6:04, city officers arrived and advised that a workplace shooting had taken place in the paint shop area of this facility. This property is situated within the Norfolk Southern locomotive shops across the street from a set of working railroad tracks adjacent to Campbell Avenue in southeast Roanoke at 8.5 Street. The evacuation of the facility was already underway as the initial officers arrived on scene. Fire and EMS assets were staged on scene, and emergency medical assistance was rendered to wounded employees located in the paint shop of the facility. We can confirm at this time that 4 employees were struck by gunfire. 1 employee sustained a fatal wound at the scene. 2 other employees sustained wounds to the lower extremities, and an additional employee was grazed across the chest area by the gunfire. The names of the deceased and wounded employees are not being released out at this time out of consideration to family members who are in out-of-state areas and responding to Roanoke based on this incident. At this time, we believe, based on our investigation, that approximately 10 rounds were fired from a 9mm semi-automatic handgun used by the assailant. This individual responsible for the attack has been identified as Getachew Fakede, 53 years of age, whose origin is from Kenya. The assailant was found deceased at the scene from what is believed to be a self-inflicted gunshot wound. No rounds were fired by the responding law enforcement officers involved in this response. Fakede last worked at Freight Car America in March of this year. Our active and ongoing investigation has substantiated that the assailant resided at 2001 Lynn Avenue, Apartment 5, southwest in the city of Roanoke. This apartment has been checked by our investigators as a precaution and to collect any additional evidence that may be linked to this incident. I want to commend at this time Freight Car America for their cooperation and their diligence to keep their facility up to date with emergency evacuation protocol. The scene is an active railroad industrial area encompassing numerous acres that had to be searched and secured to ensure that no other active threats were located. There is no evidence of any other individuals being involved in today's incident. All information at this time points to Fakede acting as the sole perpetrator. As devastating as the circumstances are in today's event, it is vital that all business and community entities stay apprised of first response and critical incident protocol. Today's circumstances could have been much worse had it not been due to the proactive steps taken by Freight Car America. I have Chief Dave Hoback with Fire EMS here to speak about the response of the healthcare providers on the scene.
Thank you, Chief Jones. Like Chief Jones indicated, we received a call at 6:02. Our apparatus responded shortly thereafter. We're placed in a staging area along Campbell Avenue. Approximately 6:10, the officers that were engaging into the facility had indicated that it was okay for us to enter. Our staff entered the building, and at 6:11, we began triaging patients. Within about 6:20, patients were being loaded into the ambulances and being transported. Like you indicated, we did transport 3 patients, and we did declare 2 patients on scene deceased. All patients were transported by 6:24 to the hospital on the wall. I'll answer any questions.
We have time for some limited questions. Yeah, Jones.
Chief, could you first give us the identity of the gentleman whose name you said, spell it for us?
Sure, will do. First name is Getachew. It's G-E-T-A-C-H-E-W. Last name Fekede. F-E-K-E-D-E.
Chief, do you have any idea on kind of a narrative of what precipitated today's events, what might have led up to or caused it?
In speaking with management from Freight Car America, they have shared with us that Fedeke worked for them up until March of this year, and then he did not report to work. At that point, after 3 days of missed work, he was officially dismissed or terminated, and they say that that's not uncommon for that industry, for individuals to just not suddenly to show up for work. They had no previous contact with him until today's events, and all indications were that he was, at the time he was there, a hard worker. So we have no true indication as what might have led to him taking these acts of violence out on this location.
Has there been any possibly that it was like workplace bullying that happened that may have driven him to this?
Not that we are aware of.
Any idea if he targeted specific people or if he just was shooting at random?
We do not know that. I know that Freight Car America's president in Chicago, Jim America, has telephoned me, and they are looking at that through their personnel office, but we have no knowledge or any way to substantiate that.
Okay, and just to clarify, it was 2 killed, well, including the shooter, and 4 injured?
No, we have the shooter is deceased, what we believe to be a self-inflicted gunshot wound. We have 1 employee deceased on scene, and the rest are injuries.
He just had the one firearm? Did he have others?
We have located 1 handgun, 9mm.
How did he come upon that? Was that his?
We have our assets at the ATF looking into how that weapon was acquired, but I have no definitive information on that at this time.
Do you know how big the magazine was when he fired 10 bullets? How big was that?
I do not know. They're still on scene, and the weapon has not been physically recovered yet.
Chief, you were mentioning the importance, I guess, of evacuation or safety procedures. Can you go over that again? In other words, could this have been a much larger loss of life if folks had followed a certain safety protocol?
Absolutely. And this morning's conversation with the local team for Freight Car America, they shared with Chief Hoback and myself that they had just asked for a workplace assessment and workplace violence and rapid response training through Travis Akins, our crime prevention officer. That was about 6 months ago, and they had just implemented new evacuation plans on how to facilitate the evacuation of their area in the event of this type of scenario. And we understand from some of the employees who did evacuate that they used the newly established protocol that had been updated, and the local administrative staff believes that had that not taken place, today's incident could have been much more serious.
Chief, forgive me, we've already talked about this, but can you tell me where in relation to the larger complex that this incident occurred, and then how the individual made his way there if he was no longer a current employee?
That is still unclear, and we're working through that. We know that he arrived by a bicycle. We do not know how he cleared the perimeter of the facility. That's something that Freight Car America is looking into, and we will follow up on as we get deeper into the nature of how he ended up there 6 months after he had been dismissed from there.
And any idea if he still has family in this area, how long he may have been here, if he found anybody in that apartment?
I have been made aware that he came to Virginia in 2011 by way of a refugee immigration program, and that he was here under that umbrella, and that his status with Homeland Security as far as his ability to work was appropriate. That's kind of it in a nutshell.
Any update on the condition of the injured?
Chief, you have any update on that?
Yeah, we have reports that the one has been discharged and 2 are still hospitalized, 1 in serious condition.
The deceased employee and the other victims, any idea of these superiors or these people that this gentleman worked with when he last worked at Freight Car America? Did they work in the same unit? Were they random? You know, anything?
We have not sustained whether they were supervisory personnel or co-workers of the assailant at this time.
When did he start at Freight Car?
I do not have that information.
You were talking about what the company had done prior to try to make their employees safer with different training. Is there anything universal to all employers, or certainly maybe large or industrial employers, things that companies can do to keep their employees more safe?
Well, the 2 general rules of thumb in today's environment related to workplace violence is to escape or to seek cover or hide as best you can in relationship to the nature and the severity of the attack. And I believe that in today's circumstances, the evacuation notice was given, or take cover, and the employees responded appropriately. They did not, wait to gather property or items or question whether it was a drill or not. They actually did what they had been instructed to do by protocol, and I truly believe that that was the difference in it being not being a higher injury or victim count than we currently have.
With that being said, have you heard any stories of people deciding to try to intervene in this situation, or maybe trying to protect others around them in a way that might have substantially lowered injuries or fatalities? Anybody in there who responded in that way?
We do not have that information if it took place at this time.
Do we know if this was in a concentrated area in terms of one specific area of a warehouse or a building, or if it's been spread out over the building?
We do. They refer to the facility as the paint shop, and it is an area where they actually paint the box cars produced by Freight Car America. So it was contained to one facility inside of this working locomotive railroad facility.
Did this gentleman ever work in the paint shop when he was there?
He was an employee of Freight Car America. I do not know his specific duties, whether he was assigned to the paint shop or not.
Brett, how many people were, one, in the building and 2 in the paint shop when this all happened?
I do not have a total number on that. I'm certainly sure that that will be something that will come out in discussion as the investigation moves along. I can say when I arrived on the scene at approximately 6:15 this morning, there were at least 50 people who had exited the facility and had taken refuge across the street on 8th and a half Street Southeast. So it was a good number of people that were impacted by this event.
Obviously, the compound is spread out over many buildings. To get into the physical paint shop, do you need a card? Do you have to go through a turnstile? Is it an unlocked door? What is the security into that building?
I am not sure at this point what type of perimeter security Freight Car America utilizes. Again, I'm sure as we get into this by tomorrow or the next day, we will have all those pieces in place.
How did the interview go with you said there was a witness in the bathroom?
My understanding is there was one employee who took coverage in a bathroom, and I have not spoken to him personally, but we wanted to make sure his health was okay, so he was transported just as a precaution, and our investigators did speak with him. I do not have the results of that, but I do know that his statement is consistent with what other people on the scene have said about the circumstances. And we will, as I said, continue to update you. This is continuing. There are still loose pieces of the puzzle that we have to lock down, but it is a dynamic type of situation. It is a huge facility. And I can't stress enough, folks, the diligence of Freight Car America and as far as putting appropriate protocol in place and briefing their employees on how to respond. I truly believe that has made all the difference in the world in today's incident here. One more question.
One last question. Are you investigating if he could have any potential ties to terrorist groups? I'm just thinking back to San Bernardino about a year ago, whether this was truly an isolated workplace incident or perhaps linked.
We will be exploring that. As I said, we have nothing to believe at this time that there is a linkage there to any type of domestic or international terrorism. It does seem to be an isolated workplace violence type of event, but we will continue to explore that to ensure that if that is a possibility, that our federal law enforcement partners are involved and have knowledge of it. One more.
Do we have any idea what he's been doing for the past 6 months?
We do not. He has no
paying his rent?
He has no contact with us. I will say that. So more later tonight or tomorrow as the investigation plays out. Thank y'all for coming.
Thank you.
And that was Roanoke City Police Chief Tim Jones giving us an update. A lot of information coming out. We now know that this was a workplace shooting at Freight Car America.
Yeah, that's what everybody has believed for most of the day, but the chief just confirmed that. He told us that this happened in the paint shop at Boxcar Americas, where they actually paint the rail cars that they make there. I think it was an interesting story in terms of how quickly everybody responded. 6:02 first call came in, 6:04, 2 minutes later the first officers arrived, and then we heard from the EMS. Chief David Hoback said by 6:10 officers had told emergency workers that it was okay to enter, and by 6:20 they had the patients in the ambulance. Again, if you are just becoming aware of this story, we had an active shooter situation in Roanoke this morning. The shooter is dead, appears to be self-inflicted. In fact, it is self-inflicted. One other employee is dead and 3 others were hurt. 2 are still in the hospital and 1 has been released. And Lindsay, I did note that there were 10 shots fired from a 9mm semi-automatic handgun.
No shots fired by police. We do know the shooter has been named by police as Getachew Fakade. Getachew Fakade, a 53-year-old man from Kenya. He was here. He came to Virginia back in 2011 by way of a refugee program. According to the police, Chief Homeland Security said he could work. He had not worked at Freight Car America since March. So a lot of questions remain as to what he's been doing for the past several months. He did say that they were not aware of him, but he has been living in Roanoke City on Lynn Avenue in an apartment there. They did search the apartment today, but it sounded as if the police were saying he was in good standings by Homeland Security to work. He just had not been doing so.
And the question is, was he a quote-unquote disgruntled employee? And what the chief told us is that this was an employee who worked there until March of last year. He missed 3 days without coming in, which apparently is common in this particular industry. And at that point, he was dismissed, and then they had not had any contact with him from March until today. So whatever the motive was behind the shooting, we still don't know. We don't know if the person who was killed was someone who was targeted in particular, or if this was somebody who was angry and went in and started firing randomly. Those are questions that we don't have the answers to at this point.
We do know the ATF is looking into how he acquired that weapon at this point, and obviously from the chief we're hearing a lot of praise about Freight Car America and how they responded so quickly to keep the rest of the employees safe. And there's a big theme there, and he was talking about how they had just went through workplace safety training through Travis Akins with the Roanoke City Police Department and had implemented those suggestions there in that training, and that really made a difference today in keeping this keeping the rest of the employees safe from this active shooter.
And they had a new evacuation process that they had just put in place, and they used it today. As we have mentioned, there were 3 shooting victims taken to Carilion Roanoke Memorial Hospital for treatment.
And that's where WSLS 10's Rob Manch joins us now live. So Rob, Chief Hoback just mentioned one of those victims has been released.
Yeah, we did just get that update from Roanoke Memorial Hospital moments ago that one of the 3 shooting victims from this morning has been released from hospital care, but those 2 other victims do still remain in hospital care and still have the same conditions they did at the shooting incident this morning. Those were that one of the victims was listed as being in fair condition, meaning they're looking at non-life-threatening injuries, but that other one victim was this morning and still is right now in serious condition, facing potentially life-threatening injuries. So we'll continue to be in touch with Roanoke Memorial Hospital here. They say they're going to release an update potentially later this afternoon on those 2 victims' conditions, but we'll keep you updated online and on WSLS 10 at 5, 6, and 7 o'clock tonight. In Roanoke, Rob Manch, WSLS 10.
All right, thank you, Robin. Of course, this is a developing story we're going to continue to follow throughout the evening. So be sure to join us for our 90 minutes of news starting at 5 o'clock.
Yes, in the meantime, you can visit our website, WSLS.com. We'll also be placing updates on our various social media channels. And again, the very latest, Getachew Fakade, a 53-year-old native of Kenya. Police have identified as a gunman in a shooting at Freight Car America this morning. The very latest coming up online and on WSLS beginning at 5.